All right, guys, welcome to the WCIA 3-in-1 podcast. It's Marlee Wierda coming at you from the studio, and you're probably realizing she doesn't usually introduce the podcast, and that is because Brett is taking a little vacation, so it's just me and Craig today.
The WCIA 3-in-1, but 2-in-1 podcast.
2-in-1, yeah. I think Brett got a little sick of us, so we're holding down the fort today. So I guess not as much has happened. I feel like within the past couple of weeks, we've always had some sort of kind of breaking news, but as of recently, there really hasn't been too much really to talk about besides maybe the draft. So Olule Batiku didn't get drafted initially, but he did sign with the New York Giants. So Craig, were you expecting that, and were you expecting him to sign a deal with the NFL?
Yeah, when he declared early for the draft, kind of raised my ears a little bit. Didn't think that he was quite ready for it. Could have really used another year in college. But when you look at the guy, I mean, he looks every bit the part of NFL defensive lineman. So I think for Wale, it was a chance that, hey, if I can make some money, let's do it now, sooner rather than later. So I always thought that there was a chance that he would go undrafted, but also that there was a chance that someone would see his measurables and his size and the production that he did have that first half of the season for Illinois and maybe take a late round flyer on him. But then again, not surprised that he went undrafted. But also, again, it kind of played out how I expected it to play out. He goes undrafted, but there a day or two after the draft, he signs the undrafted free agent deal with the Giants. So he's going to get a chance to showcase himself. It was just a matter of, he did get hurt that second half of the season, got hurt in the Wisconsin game. And so he saw an opportunity, and he didn't want to take a chance to come back to Illinois and get hurt more seriously, because that was his whole deal at USC. He was hurt, so he couldn't see the field. So he got a pretty good year in with the Illini and didn't want to take any chances. And he goes and he signs with the Giants. He's going to get an opportunity to showcase himself in a NFL camp whenever those are.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, the risk that he would have taken if he did play another year. He's injury prone, so maybe now was the right time. I wasn't surprised initially, when we had heard the announcement. It came just after the bowl game, I think, is when he, decided to put his name in the NFL draft. And I went to the pro day, and I think by far, he was definitely one of, the higher ranked candidates, if you will. I mean, there were other guys there. There was Reggie Corbin, Dele Harding, Dre Brown, but I think he just has the size and the physicality and the talent to ultimately play at that level. And I remember talking to him, and he said, he's from Nigeria, and he said, I haven't been home in 7 years. I haven't seen my family in that long. And I think that just goes to show just some of the sacrifices that some of these guys are willing to make to achieve that level and to play football professionally and ultimately just make some money.
Yeah, and I mean, he was a top 20, top 15 player coming out of high school, which says a lot that he only started playing football not long before that. So the talent is there, the size and the build and the strength is there. Everything's there that you need to have a productive defensive lineman in the NFL. He just has to stay healthy, and he has to keep improving. I wouldn't be surprised if he sticks on the Giants roster. The Giants had a top 10 pick, so they're a franchise that's trying to rebuild a little bit, and they got some young pieces. So if he produces and does well, I wouldn't be surprised to see him have a pretty good career if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess we'll switch gears a little bit, and we'll go to we'll talk about some of these transfers that are coming in. The Illini have landed 5 since during the off season, and I'm just pulling up the list we have right here. Oh, we got an ad coming. Ah! Oh man. So yeah, yesterday, Brevin Jones verbally committed. He announced it on Twitter. He's 6'4", 280 pounds, the offensive lineman. And Craig, I guess how much need do you see for maybe an offensive line role to be filled on the team right now?
Massive. It was a massive need. As good as the offensive line is right now, maybe the best. Definitely one of the best in the Big Ten. You have so much experience across those starting five, four specifically. But the offensive line has so much experience, and there's a chance that 4 of those 5 are gone after this year. And you look behind the top 5 or 6 offensive linemen, and there's not much there. So you get this kid to come in from the SEC, from Mississippi State, comes in with 4 years of eligibility left, I think I saw, after he sits out this 1 year because of the transfer rules. And he adds some depth there because, like I said, probably 4 of those starting 5 offensive linemen are going to go to the NFL next year. A couple of them are seniors, so they're gone no matter what. So, yeah, the offensive line was a huge need. Both lines were huge needs this offseason to add some depth, and they've done so on the offensive line. Defensive line, still, I think they could use a couple more pieces. But this guy's a huge get for the depth of the program.
Yeah, and I think he's a good investment for the future, too. You know, obviously he redshirted his freshman season at Mississippi State, but, you know, he has 4 years of eligibility or, you know, given, you know, he might even be able to suit up during the 2020 season with, you know, some changes that might be coming to the NCAA with that, you know, immediate play when you come in as a transfer rule that they're kind of working on. But I think that's really important because last season, you know, we saw them get a lot of grad transfers. That was like Brandon Peters, Josh Amator-Bebe, and now this guy's coming in and he, you know, could possibly have 4 years under his belt, which is, I think, what they need for the future. You know, I think programs are really built around 4-year players. Obviously, a couple grad transfers are some good gets, but I think, you know, having him there and maybe being able to make an impact the first season that he plays and in the future might definitely help them moving forward.
Yeah, but it is also a little worrisome to see him rely so much on this grad transfer market.
Right.
At some point, you need to start getting some quality high school kids that you think you can build up and build your program around. Like you said, those 4-year kids you build your program around. You can't continue to go this transfer route. It's not always going to work. You need to build some high school recruiting classes. And I know the 2021 class, I think, is pretty far behind the rest of the Big Ten. So they need to start picking things up there if they want to continue to ascend in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think they need to see more guys go into the draft, honestly. I feel like, you know, when Lovie Smith took over the program, he was an NFL coach, and he kind of has this tenure, and I feel maybe a lot of players who were recruited by him were maybe expecting that they would be able to be developed and head to that next level. And, you know, given this year, I guess, like, no one really went drafted. Batiku was the only guy that signed a deal so far, and I think maybe with this next wave, you know, this senior class, like you mentioned, Craig, does have the potential to head to the NFL. That will start bringing in more guys, and I think as more players start to get drafted, that can only help the program moving forward.
Yeah, and this senior class is Lovie's first full recruiting class. Yeah. So this is when the NFL players should start. The NFL should start reaping the rewards of Illinois and Lovie Smith's recruiting with Palczewski and Madarian Lowe and these guys that are seniors this year. Those are the guys that Lovie saw in high school and liked and wanted to come to Illinois and rebuild this thing. And so next year, I think you're going to see a handful of Illini drafted in the NFL draft, and that's going to, like you said, start good things happening. Hopefully for the Illini, it starts good things happening in the recruiting trail pretty soon.
Yeah, and we didn't touch on this actually, but a former Illini turned Vanderbilt football player, I just had to Google his name because I forgot, Keyshawn Vaughn was drafted. Craig, were you expecting that? I wasn't here during the time when he was an Illini, but did you see NFL potential in him? And, you know, maybe what was his reason for leaving the program? And is it, I guess, cool to see maybe someone who was an Illini now kind of go into the draft?
In this case, I don't think it's very cool for Illinois fans to see this kid get drafted.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he was straight up benched his sophomore year by Garrick McGee. I pulled his stats up here before we started. His freshman year at Illinois was 2015.
Yeah.
He carried the ball 157 times, caught 16 passes. So 173 times he touched the ball for more than 1,000 yards, almost 1,000 yards. His sophomore year, he got 60 carries and 9 catches. So almost 100 less, more than 100 less touches for Keyshawn his sophomore year. So Garrick McGee just straight up benched him. And so he's like, all right, I'm leaving. I'm going to go to Vandy, where he just balls out. I mean, he had, after he sat out in 2017, 2018 and 2019 were incredible years for Keyshawn. Went over 1,000 yards on the ground both years. Scored 12 touchdowns in 2018, 9 touchdowns in 2019. So, I mean, the talent was there. We saw it. I remember the North Carolina game at Memorial Stadium. I think Levy's first year, so 2016. I think it was a sellout as well. Keyshawn took one of the first 4 or 5 plays from scrimmage, took a handoff like 60 yards to the house. And that place, Memorial Stadium, was just rocking at that point. Now, North Carolina came back and behind Mitchell Trubisky, Bears' great quarterback, and took down the Illini. But you definitely saw flashes from Keyshawn at Illinois and Garrick McGee, like he did with a couple other players, Reggie Corbin as well, just kind of put him on the back burner and didn't let them show what they could do. And so they went somewhere else. Now, Reggie, of course, he stayed. But Keyshawn went somewhere else, and he succeeded in the SEC. So I think this one might hurt a little bit for the Illini more than it helps, because they had the dude and they didn't play him, and he went somewhere else and played.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess he wanted to have an opportunity to play, as, most players would definitely want. I think the whole irony of the situation is kind of funny, because he was, in the 3rd round, which is pretty decent, but then he was also drafted by Tampa, which is like Lovey's old team that he used to coach for, and it's just, I don't know, it's funny how things come full circle. So maybe that's, a little slap in the face there to his times getting benched as a Illini. But Craig, were you expecting more Illini to get drafted, and maybe how do you see this free agency playing out? I mean, do you think we can see guys like Reggie or Dre or Dele maybe get signed?
It kind of played out how I expected. I think Wale Batiku would have been the one to get drafted, and obviously that didn't happen. But I expected at least Reggie, maybe Dele, even Stanley Green to have some deals in place at this time. I talked to a couple people that said they had some opportunities but didn't jump quick enough at them. I had someone say that teams aren't taking on as many undrafted free agents this year because there's so much uncertainty with what the offseason is and when the season's going to start. And because of coronavirus, there's just so much up in the air that a lot of these teams are taking less undrafted free agents than they have in the past. So I'm kind of surprised that we haven't seen Reggie specifically signed. I know he doesn't have the breakaway speed, and he's lacking a couple things, but he seemed to be a pretty good candidate to get on somewhere, and he hasn't yet. Maybe once we get later into the year, they start filling in some more roster spots. But I'm a little surprised we haven't seen him. But then when I talk to some people, I'm a little less surprised because they described to me just how volatile this free agent market is right now because of everything we're dealing with.
Yeah, and I think maybe Reggie didn't have the best senior season that he had anticipated. He was kind of splitting time with a lot of guys, and his breakout season was what? His sophomore or junior year, was it, Craig?
Junior year.
Yeah.
He had a really good junior year. And we even asked him about it during his senior season this past 2019, how close he was to leaving to go to the draft after his junior year because he was riding on such a high. And he said he was really close. He said he was pretty much out the door, and Levy straight up told him, "Nah, you're coming back." And he's like, "All right, I'm coming back." Yeah. So he was really close to leaving after 2018, but decided to come back. And now his numbers weren't great, but I still think he had a pretty good year and showcased some stuff out of the backfield that he could do. It just wasn't enough to get him into the first 7 rounds of the draft.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, Craig, anything else before we move on to some NCAA stuff?
Yeah, we had a Central Illinois high schooler drafted.
Oh, yes.
Albert Okwa Abanam from Sacred Heart Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
He graduated from SHG 2016, I think. Let me check here. Yeah, graduated in 2016. So his last season with SHG was 2015 football season. Tight end, really good tight end. He went to Missouri, played 3 years at Missouri, redshirted his first year there. His best years were his freshman and sophomore years when Drew Lock was the Missouri quarterback.
Wow.
And guess who the Broncos quarterback is now?
Tell me.
Drew Lock. So he's reconnecting with his college quarterback. Good for Albert. Easier to say Albert O than Okwa Abenon.
Yeah, I'm surprised you pronounce it very well.
Well, I ran the story Friday the other day when he got drafted, so I had to make sure and get it down for the broadcast. So I had plenty of practice. I think I repeated it about 500 times, and I'm probably still messing it up. But yeah, he's the first player from the Central State 8 Conference to get drafted in the NFL. So congrats to Albert O. Should be a good landing spot for him in Denver and continuing his football career.
Well, awesome. From Central Illinois to Denver. And it's always good to see, the local athletes moving on and doing big things. It gives us hope for us little people over here still in Illinois. But so I guess some big things happening with the NCAA as of recently. On Wednesday it was that the Board of Governors announced that they are supporting a rule that would now allow student athletes to get compensated, get some money for the use of their name, image, and likeness. So that would include things like, endorsing products on TV and radio and doing social media influencing. I know that's really big right now, and things of that nature. So Craig, what are your thoughts on this kind of decision by the NCAA, and what's some takeaways from that?
It's a step forward. It's a logical next step. It's still going to be interesting to see where it goes and how it's utilized and all that stuff, but it's a logical next step, and one I know athletes are specifically excited about. I saw a bunch of the Illini football and basketball players putting it on Instagram with like the big eyes emojis, like, oh, here we go, and stuff like that. So it's good. I think that is the right choice. But I don't think this is over. I think there's going to be a lot more to this and a lot of future steps that we still need to get through to see how it's implemented and how it gets utilized and what players do and all that stuff. So there's a lot that goes into this, but I do think it's the right move and a correct step.
Yeah, and there were, some restrictions that the NCAA had kind of rolled out off the bat. Obviously the university can't be paying these athletes for any of these third-party endorsements or anything like that. And, they're not allowed to, I think it was like, use the school logo. Obviously they can identify themselves as, I guess, an Illinois athlete or whatever it may be, but they can't use any trademarked logos or anything like that. I'm pulling up here the release from Josh Whitman, because he did say that, he supported it. Just a little tidbit from that there. He said, there's still a number of questions that still require consideration, and I look forward to being an active participant in the next steps toward a January approval. So that's pretty much what needs to happen next for this to become a reality. They said that they're going to take a vote. Schools will take a vote at the next, NCAA convention, which won't be till January. So these rules won't take effect until the start of the 2020-2022 academic year. So, Craig, do you think athletes, should be able to get money for these kind of things? I think it's one of the big, debates in sports. Obviously, it kind of veers off of a pay-for-play type thing, but do you agree with what the NCAA is doing here?
Yeah, I think that they deserve to make money off their name, image, and likeness. If they want to endorse a product or if they want to do their social media thing and make a little money, I'm fully on board with that. When it comes to the pay for play, I'm a little more hesitant when it comes to that. But you're your name, image, and likeness, it's yours. Like, you should be able to profit off of that. Just because you attend a school like University of Illinois shouldn't limit you from making some money off of who you are. So I'm fully on board with this. When it gets above, like you mentioned, the pay for play, that's when things start to get a little murky, at least in my eyes, as opposed to this name, image, and likeness.
Yeah, definitely. Pay for play certainly gets more tricky, and it's like, oh, how do you, I guess, spread out equal pay between, you know, the golfers, the basketball players, the football players, because obviously, you know, so many different sports are, you know, football and basketball obviously are the biggest revenue drivers in the NCAA, so I think that would make it tough. But yeah, I'm on the same page as you, Craig. I think, you know, that it definitely can't hurt if an athlete, you know, wants to make a little money off of an endorsement. And again, these are like third-party things, so they're not going to be able to get paid by the university. And I think social media influencing is so big now, and even more so than like TV and radio advertisements. I mean, you look at, like, I'll just pull up Io's Instagram for an example. Let's see. He has 33,000 Instagram followers, and he should deserve to make a little money off of, you know, if there's a product that he uses or wants to endorse. I'm fully on board. So good step by the NCAA. Craig, any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you were a college athlete not too long ago,
right?
From that angle, what's your perspective of this, and was this talked about back then?
Yeah, I think, you know, it was a little different because we didn't obviously get, you know, some of the national exposure as maybe, you know, like the Illinois volleyball team would have gotten. You know, our games weren't televised on ESPN, so people didn't really know who we were. But, you know, let's say I was a social media influencer outside of my sport. You know, I just had a lot of followers on Instagram, and, you know, there's a product that I wanted to endorse that would totally be an NCAA violation. And I think, you know, I would have enjoyed it. I mean, I don't think it maybe would have happened for me, but for us, you know, being a smaller Division III program, it didn't really impact us the way as, you know, many of these, you know, Division I schools that get a lot of recognition would have. So I mean, it would have been nice to make a couple bucks, but, you know, I also had a part-time job and all that, so that helped pay the bills, I guess. So
the only thing that I don't like about this, and when I saw that it was approved Wednesday, I was like, oh my God, yes. I can get my college football video game back. I can get the college basketball video games back.
Yeah.
But no. Because to make those games, they have to have the rights to the logos and the licensings of the universities, and that is not included in this. So we're back to square one with the video games and all that stuff. Yeah. But eventually, hopefully within the next 3 or 4 years, this all gets ironed out and we can get back to the best sports video game ever, and that's NCAA college football.
I am not an avid video game player, so I'm not too bummed out about this one. So yeah. Well, Craig, what have you been up to these days? I take it probably playing a lot of video games, but is the quarantine life still the same?
Yeah, a lot of video games. Doing that, working from home. I've been in the studio and at the station more this week because of Brett being on his, I guess it's a staycation?
A staycation, yeah. A staycation.
Since he's a quarantine staycation because he can't go anywhere.
Right.
Since he's been gone, I've been in the station a little bit more and just still doing the same kind of stuff. We're still trying to find the stories and doing all of that, but it's the time is flying, but it's also going by slow, if that makes sense.
Yes, I was just talking to someone about this. It's like the days almost are like this month went so fast, but I feel like time is in a standstill. You know, everyone is on pause, but like time is moving so quickly around us, and I don't know, it's crazy to think. I just, you know, I'm kind of counting down the days till we can get back to normal. I mean, I've been in the studio more. Like today I'm here kind of holding down the fort on the podcast while Brett is on vacation or staycation. But it's so nice to get a change of scenery, and I don't think I really realized it until I was here anchoring on Wednesday, and I was like, wow, I'm out of the house finally, because the novelty of it has kind of worn off, working from home. It was good, but I started to lose so much focus just being in the same place, before work, during work, and after work in the same, 600 square feet apartment. I was like, this is getting tough. So
yeah, I did break the social distancing rules the other day. I went and had lunch with my parents and my grandma in Effingham.
That's fun though. Where did you even go to lunch?
It's like the halfway point from home and Champaign for me.
Yeah.
So they drove up from Pinckneyville and I drove down from Champaign, and so we had two different cars, and so we just piled into my mom's one car, which is definitely not 6 feet away from each other.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen them I hadn't seen them since like 2 or 3 months before this all started. So
yeah.
And my grandma has been. I was hesitant to even go because of my grandma, because she's older, and but she literally doesn't get out of the house anymore. So they got her out of the house to come up, and it was nice to just chit chat and catch up and see them. But other than that, it's literally either home or at the station, and that's it. It's so weird.
I know, and the grocery store, and starting today, which is May 1st, we're gonna have to wear masks everywhere that we go. So I've been wearing. But
golf courses did open, so I might be going there a little bit.
Yeah, are you gonna golf at all?
I might.
Oh, honestly, I might have to pick up some golf because I'm going.
If that's the only thing we can do.
Yeah, I might as well. But think about now how busy like the golf courses are going to be. If everyone's going to be there because they want to golf, like it's going to totally ruin the point.
It's true. It's true. What do you think about this senior send-off we're doing?
I really enjoy it, honestly, especially recently with the graduation news that there's not going to be able to be any high school graduations. I think that these kids, totally deserve it. I mean, we talk about it every week on the podcast, just how bad we feel for them not being able to do their senior season. So hopefully, I feel like this is our part and our way to maybe give back to them and let them get their time in the spotlight, even though they might not get now a graduation or a senior night or something like that.
Yeah, so for those of you listening that might not watch the newscast or don't know what we're doing, every night at 10 o'clock, we've taken submissions of pictures from seniors from this 2020 spring high school sports calendar, and whoever's anchoring that day just picks 3. It could be a group of seniors, it can be one individual senior, and basically just giving them their 10-15 seconds of a spotlight on the newscast and saying, congratulating them on a great career and it didn't end how they wanted. So if you know a senior that you haven't submitted yet, send it to us. Any of our social media pages, my email, Marlee's email, Brett's email. Brett's kind of spearheaded it, so he's kind of taking control and done the picture thing, and we just kind of pick our 3. But if you know a senior that needs some recognition, we'll be doing this for the next couple of weeks, months maybe. So send them in. We'll give you your publicity for a little bit.
Yeah, and they definitely deserve it too. And I think these past few weeks too, we've been telling the stories of some high school athletes who don't get the chance to compete in their final seasons. I talked to the Mount Zion softball team. It would have been earlier last week, and head coach Greg Blanky, he got emotional talking about his seniors in that group and just them not being able to finish what they started. They had gone to the state tournament 2 years in a row. They came in 4th, and they came in 3rd last year. And they were talking about how this year they were really poised to make another deep run, and it just kind of stinks for them. One of the girls that I interviewed, Kinsey Wrigley, she said something that really resonated with me, and she said, as athletes, we're always told, play every game like it's your last. She's like, but, I didn't really think that at the time. I thought I would have another season. So this whole situation is just kind of showing athletes and maybe just showing everyday people just these life lessons of not to take anything for granted and doing everything like it might be your last, because this world that we're living in, I don't think anyone really expected this to happen.
Yeah, for sure. And a couple of times a week, maybe I'll find myself just kind of sitting there and like taking it all in almost. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing how we come out of this, how much different society in general is going to be when this is all done, and we can kind of get back to what we consider normal. Like, are we done with the handshakes even? Like, are we going to change the way we greet people? How much will our jobs change because we're getting by pretty easily doing these interviews over video and all that? Like, how different is that going to be? Like, how much more precautions are we going to have as a country and as a society when we come out of this? Because this is teaching us a lot, I think, and at least I hope is teaching us a lot. So I'm really looking forward to getting done with it. One, because I'm getting tired of it and I want to get back to normal. But two, I want to see where we're at as a country and how we come out of this and how we bounce back from this.
Yeah, and just like, this is going to change the world. I mean, I was talking to my dad and he said, during the wars, that's when, the men would get drafted and women would have to be in the factories, making ammunition and things like that. And he said, maybe that was like one of the first times that women were in the workforce, and now, it's the norm for women to be working and things like that. So I definitely think some kind of big social change is going to come of this, and maybe people will be more appreciative of the time that we get to spend with other people, and I think we're living in such an age where technology is very prevalent, which I think only helps us in this situation. We're able to social distance and still communicate. I mean, obviously I have you on a Zoom call while we're doing this podcast, but I think, maybe now when we finally get the chance to be back together in large groups, that we won't be sitting there looking at our phone all day, and we'll take the moments that we do have in person with people, and we won't take those for granted, and we'll maybe become more present in the present moment, is kind of what I think.
Yeah, I agree. Well said.
Cool. All right. Well, Craig, anything else before we sign off?
I think I'm good. Stay safe. Have a good weekend.
Yeah. Stay safe, everyone. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Was there anything else?
I'm good.
Oh, okay. All right, guys. That'll do it for the WCIA 3-in-1. Today was the 2-in-1 podcast, but we'll see you here next week. Bye.